Kids graduate high school without ever having read a single book all the time. And often these students have all A's and B's when they graduate.
Elementary school kids are not reading. Kids are not reading. Kids cannot read.
The system that created the literacy crisis. Teachers say this literacy crisis didn't appear overnight. It's the result of years of policy decisions, teaching trends, and students being passed along without mastering the basics. Let's look at what teachers are saying about the system itself.
Your kid can't do this, then they can't read.
What? Nah. Kari, come here. No, do like this. No, the other knee, the other side. Go like this. No, this one to this one.
Really cute.
Oh. Alright. KJ, come here. I'm calling in reinforcements. This one and then this one, like that. Yeah. Oh, snap. It don't matter how fast you're going, Carl, you still run. Alright, cool. You got that one.
This might seem random, but it's actually connected. Cross-body movements help build neurological pathways tied to reading and writing. Coordination, motor planning, and brain development all intact. When kids struggle with basic coordination tasks, it sometimes overlaps with academic struggles too. Let's see what the comments say. It's called crossing the midline, and it's a skill that will develop as little ones grow. Sounds crazy, but my dyslexic son made the most improvement in his reading by doing physical therapy. A lot of crossing the middle line activities. I thought it was a waste of time at first, but the results were shocking.
Kids graduate high school without ever having read a single book all the time. And often these students have all A's and B's when they graduate. People find this very baffling, but I'm going to tell you exactly how it happens. Let's start all the way back in kindergarten. K through 2 is when you're supposed to learn how to read. And I don't mean learn how to comprehend a text. I mean learn how to actually break down words, sound them out, and this should be happening through phonics instruction. The issue is that phonics instruction was out of vogue for a while, even though it's the most important factor in a student's reading comprehension. So if a student was in kindergarten in the early mid-2000s, there's a good chance that their teacher wasn't really giving them any phonics instruction that they needed, and instead they were just learning how to make guesses about, the next word in a text. This does not work. It has been proven over and over again to be ineffective. Let's say a student now moves on to third grade. In third grade, there's a shift. K through 2 are supposed to be learning to read, and 3 through 12 are supposed to be reading to learn. So each year, 3 through 12, kids are getting increasingly complex texts, but they're not really receiving instruction on how to read. This is when frustration sets in, and that frustration is ultimately going to manifest in avoidance of reading altogether. The task of reading when you don't know how to read is painful. If you don't believe me, go pick up a book in a foreign language that you do not speak and try to read it for 20 minutes and comprehend as much as you can. But here's the thing, as kids get older, it also gets embarrassing to not know how to read. So instead of saying, I don't know how to read, kids say, I hate reading. It's boring. Now you have an identity around being a non-reader, and unfortunately that can stick for a long time. Okay, but how are kids passing high school classes, often with A's and B's, when those classes require them to read books? By high school, non-readers have developed a really advanced set of coping mechanisms, because the whole time they were not acquiring the skills of reading because we weren't teaching them. They were acquiring coping mechanisms so that they can still do well enough in school to meet whatever standards they or their parents have for them. This could look like cheating on assessments, but there are more benign ways to get around reading, like listening during a class discussion, repeating what your classmates are saying, trying to remember some of those points, and then using them when you write your essay about a book you've never read. As a school system, we are far too focused on the product, which is the essay or the final test, and not the process, which is the reading. So ultimately, students know that that is what they're being graded on. That's what they need to do, is perform on the task. They find ways to do it without reading. And ultimately, they can graduate high school, maybe with all A's and B's, go on into the world functionally illiterate.
This connects everything. When students are passed along without mastering reading, they develop coping strategies, memorizing words, guessing patterns, avoiding reading out loud. But eventually, the gap becomes too big to hide. And by high school, it becomes painful. Let's look at the comments. It says, not teaching phonics makes no sense to me. That's right. And now you have people saying, would've.
Elementary school kids are not reading. Kids are not reading. Kids cannot read. It doesn't matter if your child's at an A school or if your child's at a D school or if your child's at a charter school or a private school. I have seen kids at all areas. They all struggle. They all struggle because they don't have exposure and they don't have consistency with reading. We can blame the Department of Education. We can blame the literacy rates being at an all-time high. We can blame the schools, the teachers, but education teacher of 4 years, I specifically teach kids with learning disabilities how to read and to read accurately. We're not talking about teaching kids to read with special education disabilities. We're talking about teaching kids to read that have not had that exposure and that just cannot read, and no environmental factors included. Exposure and consistency. These two things are most important when reading, and these kids are not exposed to reading at a young age, and they do not have consistent reading, whether that's at school, at home. They don't have enough exposure of reading in general. The perception of teaching kids to read is it is the teacher's job to teach their children to read. It is the school's job to teach their children to read. Have you been in a public education classroom recently? Teacher to student ratio makes it nearly impossible to differentiate all different reading levels consistently. And I'm talking every single day for targeted reading instruction. You can have the most experienced and most knowledgeable reading expert teaching your child. If you are not doing it consistently, and I mean at least 4 times a week, 15 to 20 minutes a session, it's not going to be effective. If you have elementary school kids that are reading at grade level or even below grade level, get them a tutor, get them extra support to give them those skills to have them be successful with reading. Reading is not meant to be natural, but you need consistency, exposure, and somebody that is qualified and knows the science of reading for it to be successful for any child in a short amount of time.
Reading improves with repetition, practice, and feedback, but intervention has to happen early. Helping a struggling reader in the 1st grade is much easier than trying to fix it in the 8th grade. Let's look at some of the comments. I can show you my child's score. He improved 97% going from public school to private. Being away from behaviors like chair throwing is important. Right, it's very difficult as a teacher if you're meant to be teaching students how to read, but then the behavior is so bad, there's chaos in the classroom, and you spend most of your time trying to control all the students and fix the behavioral problems if you're meant to be teaching them how to read or other skills. Because parents don't make their kids read anymore. Make your kids read. I would say parents have to read and the kids learn from that. Kindergarten teacher here, and just reading to your babies 1 book a night makes an insane difference. Also, once they're learning, let them start trying to read to you. Very nice. It has to be a school-home partnership for success.
A lot of people are confused about the literacy crisis because they don't know what illiteracy actually looks like. Now, as someone who taught 3rd and 4th graders, I can confirm that the literacy crisis is a very real thing, and everyone should be concerned about it. It affects so much. It's way bigger than you think. So let me just drop some stats really quick. I got the stats. 21% of adults in the U.S. are functionally illiterate. Even more concerning is that 54% of adults in the U.S. read at or below a 6th grade level. And 66% of 4th graders in the U.S. as of 2024 are reading below grade level. That is concerning.
Policy matters. When systems focus heavily on standardized testing and promotion rates, schools adapt. If moving students forward becomes logistical instead of skills-based, students advance without mastery. And once someone falls behind in reading, every subject becomes harder. The long-term consequences go far beyond the classroom. Some teachers believe we're heading towards a future where reading ability creates a major divide in society.